Welcome back to Living the Zolkeen. We have a very special guest today from jaguarwisdom.org. And without further ado, let's get right into it. This is Living the Zolkeen. I'm One Dog Steve, and that's Three Seed Mitch over in Japan. I'm here in Vancouver Island, and today we've got Ken Johnson on the show, and it's a really great pleasure to be able to talk to you. I've read one of your books many times over. Every time I meet someone new that's of significance in my life, I look at the Mapping Your Inner Cosmos book that you wrote. It's one of the greatest resources that I have right now, apart from Zolkeen Explorer and obviously just talking to other daykeeper people. But yeah, I mean, it's really great to be able to talk to you.
Well, it's good to be here.
On 3 Lamette.
Okay. So.
Yeah, usually we just... so go ahead, Paul.
Well, okay, first of all, just, in case anybody's listening, do you want to do like a quick introduction of yourself, like the history of, your books and sort of how you got into the Zolkeen?
Yeah.
No, okay. My introduction to the Zolkeen was kind of unusual in the sense that it was completely unexpected. It was nothing I planned. It was nothing I intended. Instead, I was asked to give a lecture back in 1987 about Jose Arguelles' harmonic convergence and what the significance was. So I went to the library and I did some very quick research, very quick, and gave the lecture. And after that, I found the subject very fascinating, even if I didn't find the event terribly fascinating. So in time, I began to collect information. And in the early 90s, that search for information led me to Yucatan, several expeditions down there, which led me deeper and deeper until in 1997, the original edition of Jaguar Wisdom was published. And the publisher let it go out of print. I went on, did other things, and then I found out that it had become sort of an underground hit. And it must have been somewhere around 2005, 2006. I bought the copyright back from the publisher, had it republished, set up a website, and the next thing I know, and this is where it becomes strange, guys, the next thing I know, I receive a phone call, not a phone call, excuse me, an email from someone I had never met, didn't know, and who was the one expatriate living in Momostenango. And she wrote to me and she said, "It's good to see your book is back in print. It's time you came down here and learned some things from some people." So off I went, and I reached Momostenango on a rickety old bus in early 2010. And I was there more often than I was here in the States until early in 2013. So that is pretty much the story. And the book that you just mentioned, Mapping Your Inner Cosmos, An Introduction to Mayan Astrology, that was actually written in Momostenango.
Nice.
That's really...
And, because they had encouraged me to study the astrology, because I seemed to have an affinity for it. But yeah, the book that you rely upon was actually written there with daily help from the day keepers.
Well, that's why it's such a good book.
Thank you.
Yeah, great book. Let's see. So I first was introduced to you probably around 2010, maybe 11, and you came onto the scene as somebody that was a clarifier. You know, you were kind of holding up the light in the height of the whole Carl Koloman as the sort of scholar, the Mayan scholar. You came in and were sort of clearing things up and going, well, hold on a minute, you know, this is you know, a lot more traditional and authentic, and you started talking about Momostenango, which, you know, I'd never heard about, and you were there to sort of clear up some of the smoke.
Well, that was what I was trying to do, and maybe since you mentioned the fact that, you know, rather than an argument among alternative scholars, this seemed to be based on something native and indigenous, I probably should clarify for your listeners who don't know what Momostenango really is, shouldn't I?
Yeah.
Sure, please, yeah.
Okay. It is said in the old Spanish chronicles that the empire of the Quiché Maya had two capital cities. One was a political capital, and one was a religious or spiritual capital. After they were conquered, all mention of the spiritual capital vanishes from history. But most anthropologists believe that this was Momostenango. And the Quiché Maya of the mountains in western Guatemala were notoriously militant, rebellious, and ornery. They gave the Spanish conquerors a lot of trouble. Momostenango lies 7,500 feet up in the mountains. So it's not easy to get there. There's only one road. The Spanish didn't like to go up there because the possibility of getting attacked and ambushed by the Maya was a really strong possibility. Momostenango was virtually left alone for 500 years.
Nice.
They do have a Catholic church up there, of course, but many of the traditions from the spiritual capital of the Quiché Maya remained virtually unchanged. And people have asked me many times, well, you know, wouldn't we expect interpretations of the calendar and the day signs to change radically over the centuries, over the years? And I'm revealing this for the first time on your show, okay? This is an exclusive. Okay?
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
There are documents in the town archives of several Quiché towns in that region. And one of these documents is dated from the 1600s, about 100 years after the Spanish conquest. And it's written in the Quiché language, but in Western letters, which means it's almost exactly, it's written almost in exactly the same way as the Mayan creation epic, which dates from the same time and comes from the same region. And these documents have never been released to foreign anthropologists. The daykeepers simply do not want to have it known. I've seen the Xerox copies that some of them have made, you know, because it's kept by several different people. and they can read it in Quiche fairly well. Nothing much has changed. The tradition up there in the mountains, in the Quiche Highlands, is, to this very day, remarkably close to what it was at the time of the Spanish conquest. So, it's of course, nowadays you can find the Zolkin, the sacred calendar, spreading throughout Guatemala, kind of like wildfire. It's almost like a cultural, well, not almost, it is a cultural revival, a cultural and spiritual renaissance or revolution, virtually.
That's great to hear.
And so anywhere now, you can find day keepers, you can find people being initiated. This all comes out of the Guatemalan peace accords that were signed in December of 1996, and which ended the terrible civil war. And in the peace accords that were signed, there was, I don't know quite what to call it. It was some clauses that were very similar to the Native American Religious Freedom Act that was created here in the United States in the late 1970s. And basically it gave the Mayan traditionalists their religious freedom. And so knowledge of the calendar has been spreading since then, but most of the teachers are Quiche from the mountains, because that's where it was preserved for the longest time.
Right.
This is, simply fascinating. Not many people are really trying to uncover the old traditional way and present it in a unmodified, undiluted, form. So what you're doing, I've always thought of it as a really great service to anybody that's interested in the topic.
Yeah, I mean, I think of your work down there as like you're one of like the early adopters as far as like Western civilization goes, of like people who actually care about what the Mayan tradition is, because the first Western adopters weren't adopters at all. They were just trying to literally destroy it and burn it out of existence, right? So we're like, you are like, a generation or like a couple generations before us trying to, uncover this stuff out of the darkness again. And here we are, some younger people, and we are interested in the revival as well. And I don't know what the tipping point is, what kind of numbers exactly, we would need to see an interest to expand into our civilization outside of Guatemala and the neighboring countries. But we're definitely, some of the few people that we know in our kind of society that are very interested in it. And I think both Paul and myself are interested in going to Guatemala.
Okay. And that brings me to an interesting point. In everything I've seen written on the internet or from recent publications, they have an interpretation that's given to the whole Trisena overall. However, I never actually heard anyone in Guatemala say that.
Right.
Or do that. Now, of course, that doesn't mean it was never done. If you go to the Aztec rendering of the calendar, which they based on the Toltec tradition, then the Trisena does have its own interpretation.
I've heard you mention that.
And it's very important. Why they don't have an overall interpretation for the entire Trisena, I don't know. The best that I could say is that it colors things. So since it was one Kame, I'm going to mention another kind of arcane and very interesting bit that I picked up from a Mayan traditionalist by the name of Lem Fox. And he pointed out that even though Kame means death, the word is related very closely to the word for the present tense in grammar. In other words, this Trisena is all about the moment, the now. And despite its association with death, it's considered a very positive day sign. When children are born on Kame, everyone is happy. It's a good thing. And it is said that people who are born on Kame, and perhaps this does apply to a lesser degree to the whole Trisena, it is said that they're blessed by the ancestors. And it's just one of those day signs where they're kind of good at everything. They can be practical and mystical at the same time. So it's really considered a very positive sort of a thing. And they also say that people who are born on this day are forever young. They always look youthful, much different than their actual biological years. When you're 60, you'll look 40, and so on and so forth. Right. And, I just want to give like a little memory here of what used to happen at the beginning of each Trisena, is that we would go to a little store. They have shops, and I don't know exactly what the right word for them would be in English. In Spanish, they call them tiendas de ofrendas, which means stores for offerings. They sell all the stuff that you offer up at the shrines, at the altars. And there was a particular shop where you go down a hill, and once you've made it down the hill, there was a meadow, and there was a stream running through the meadow, and the name of the place was Pah, which means the place of water. And they also called it the place of the number one. There were shrines for some of the main ceremonial days. There was, for example, a shrine that was dedicated to the number 6, and another one for 8, and another one for 9. And those being the main ceremonial. Oh, and number 8 too. Did I say that? 1, 6, 8, and 9 were the main shrines. But the place down there in the meadow was the place where everybody went at the beginning of each Trisena, and they would gather water from the running stream and put it in little vials, little glass vials that they bought at the tienda, the offering store. And then, later on, during the shamanic initiation day of 8 bots, 8 monkey, 8 chuen, however you want to say it, the gatekeepers would sprinkle some of this water over the heads of their apprentices while the initiation was going on. I did say just now that 1, 6, 8, and 9 were the main ceremonial days. And today is a 3qanil. It's kind of interesting. They're not crazy about 3 days. And the reason is that they feel, that even numbers are more balanced and middle numbers are more balanced, but odd numbers and numbers that are either very high or very low can be a little bit unstable. And one thing that 3 is actually quite good for is doing things at home. And the reason it's good for doing things at home, or the reason that 3 is associated with the home, is because each traditional Mayan home has a wood burning stove. It's usually made out of concrete, and it's a wood burning stove. You don't see gas or electric stoves in the villages at all. And upon these stoves, or upon the top of the stove, as it's getting hot, the lady of the house will place 3 rocks in a triangular pattern. And these are said to be the 3 hearthstones that the hero twins of the creation myth set forth when they created the world that we're now living in. And the 3 hearthstones, as I said, are in a triangular pattern. And you can find this triangular pattern all over the Mayan world. You can find it geographically as the 3 volcanoes of Lake Atitlan. They form the same triangular pattern. And also, there are many representations of the 3 hearthstones in Mayan sacred architecture. For example, the most famous rendering is the 3 temples in what they call the Upper Acropolis in Palenque, laid out in exactly the same pattern. That was around 700 AD. And then many years earlier, around about 200 BC, they've now identified buildings made in the same pattern in El Mirador, one of the cities that they're just reclaiming from the jungle. So that is the reason the 3 is associated with. Beyond that, the 3 hearthstones also exist in the sky. Sort of a as above, so below kind of a paradigm. And the 3 hearthstones in the sky are formed by the central star in the belt of Orion, as well as Orion's 2 feet. And you will find some of the Maya very scholarly traditionalists who can still point this out for you. And I fondly remember mentioning that to a woman who was cooking my dinner, and she said, yes, of course it's in the sky, and of course it's here on the hearth at home, because we like to bring a little bit of heaven down to our home. Hence the 3. And qanil, the word literally means yellowing. Kan being the Mayan word for yellow. This is a very positive day sign. Everybody loves it. So what we have is a combination of a trisena today that begins with a very auspicious day sign. And then we have today 3qanil. And qanil is also very auspicious. When they say yellowing, what they actually mean is ripening. ripening as corn ripens in the fields. So this is a day for growing things, and that includes projects, ideas, concepts, anything you please, really. Everything grows well, grows better on Qanil days. I remember that on Qanil days, we used to go to, this is interesting. Of course, the conquerors took all the best agricultural lands themselves, and they left the Maya only with scrappy little bits and pieces of land, usually high up on the mountains, and little tiny plots of land on which to grow corn. But still, to this very day, even though agriculture isn't the main subsistence in that region anymore, you will find that everybody has their plot of land where they grow corn. And on Qanil days, we used to strap those old, they call them tump lines. It's like a strap that goes around your forehead so you can carry things that are a little bit more serious than a backpack, and do it with some ease. And we would put those around our heads and climb up to these tiny cornfields where the Maya grow their corn. That was on Qanil days. And I also met a woman who was renowned throughout the whole region as the best of their traditional healers. And she would often, well, not often, I shouldn't say often, she told me that the best time to do it was when a Qanil day corresponds to a full moon. And we tend to think the moon as being an exact, precise moment when the sun and the moon are in precise opposition. But to the Maya, it's just the 2 or 3 days when the moon actually looks full. So this is going to happen. I think I worked it out to maybe twice a year or something. And she would go out on full moon days, full moon nights, because she said that plants, especially healing herbs, grow better and with more juice, more energy, and more vitality on Qanil days that are linked to the full moon. And she would go out and pray to the plants and cut them with her knife, and she would take them home and she would put them in a little dryer that was made out of, cardboard and pieces of tin. And she would leave them there for 20 days. And when the next Qanil day came around, she would take the herbs out and put them on her altar. They were now fully dried, ready for use, and she would do ceremony and ritual over them on the next Qanil day to consecrate for healing purposes. In addition to agriculture of all sorts, it also has a link with traditional healing, herbal healing, things like that. So that's basically a rundown on it. I would say that today, it's ending now for most of your listeners, I'm sure, but today would be an excellent time to stay home, tend your garden, and work on your favorite beloved project.
I'd say that's pretty accurate for the Qanil sign.
I have a question about the usage of the Yucatec interpretations and language on the internet. Do you know how that originated?
Which language is that again?
The Yucatec, like Manik and Maine and all these.
Okay.
Yeah.
Qanil would be Lamont in
Right.
Yucatec.
Sure.
Maya is not one language. It's an entire family of languages, and there are 30 languages in the Mayan family. That I got from the anthropologist Robert Sittler, who teaches at the University of Florida. He says 30, and I've seen that in other places. So there are 30 Mayan languages that one has to deal with, and Yucatec is the most common and the most widely spoken. Quiché is probably the second most widely spoken, and it has a special importance, not only because they were the ones who held on to the calendar knowledge, but it has special importance because the Mayan creation epic, Pabuch, is written in Quiché. So you're going to find a fair amount of confusion. Some people will be using the animal names which come from the Aztec tradition. Other people will be using the Yucatec, and I've started to see more and more Quiché on the internet these days. Some people tell me I'm partly responsible for that, but in any event, the language can be sort of a confusing thing. And as far as Lamont goes, to the best of my knowledge, the scholars don't even know what this word means. No one knows what the word Lamont. But what do they call it? Rabbit in the Aztec tradition. And I never heard it described as a rabbit by the Quiché. I've kind of reached the conclusion that even in ancient times, to journey from Guatemala to central Mexico would also have given you a very, very large number of differences in the way people practiced and interpreted the calendar.
I have a question for you.
Okay.
Just a sort of off topic, but now that we have you on the show, I mean, this is like one of the most interesting questions that I can think of that I'd like to ask you is, what do you think is or are the chances of, the Zolkeen being spread up into the consciousness of the Western mind, and what do you think would be the biggest obstacles to that happening over the next generation or so?
Well, I do feel that more and more people are becoming aware of it. When I first started out, no one was familiar with the contemporary indigenous tradition. You would almost have had to, track down Dennis and Barbara Tedlock themselves in order to find that out. Martin Prechtel had not yet started writing his books. No one was aware that he kept calendar, except I was aware because he lived in the same town as me, Santa Fe, New Mexico. But in any event, now I hear from people all over the world, including Japan, who keep calendar. So I think that the best chance for it becoming a very commonly known thing is simply if more and more people become aware of it and make it part of their daily lives. I don't really think that governments would ever adopt it and toss out the Western calendar. That would surprise me very much. In that sense, the status quo, quote unquote, the way we do things, is the greatest obstacle. It's just, even though there are more and more people all the time, every time I look, every time I go on the internet, there are new people coming to my pages and writing to me and asking me questions about it, starting to keep the calendar for themselves. It's still a fairly small number comparatively, as far as the world goes.
Right.
So,
one thing I've always wondered is the Zolkeen a type of biology? I feel like there's something biological happening to the different people. Like for me, because of my Nawal, I have certain biological qualities or characteristics, and same thing. A good example would be your Emosh. So Emosh, I've heard, doesn't get sick, or some people have a lot of energy. They're just born with hot hands, and other people are born with kind of cold hands. And I've noticed that there's something biological happening, very scientific, that could be measured. And me, I'm teaching now, and I try to find out the Nawals of the kids, and I can use that to kind of guide them if they're maybe a troublesome kid or something like that.
There are certain things. For example, whenever this goes way back to before I was familiar with anything having to do with the Maya. When I would work with different New Age healing modalities, I always had the urge to use my left hand, and I always got better results when using my left hand. And I was born on Enosh. And also, another bit that is biological, in a sense, is when they say, which I just mentioned earlier, that Khmer people always seem to be younger than they really are. That's another interesting bit of biology. Let me see if I can think of any others.
What about wind? Wind has a very unique...
It's very interesting. And this is among people who have actually never heard of the Mayan calendar. I've found an extraordinary number of yoga teachers born on Ik, because Ik is the breath of life. And they all practice pranayama, the yogic breathing. This stuff goes on at a very deep level. It goes on at a level that people are not aware of. And I've had, like I said, I went down there primarily to study the astrology because I had an affinity with it. And I wrote that book while I was in Momos with the Daykeepers. And as I've gone on, I've read hundreds and hundreds of charts now, and it's always amazing to me that individuals with absolutely no knowledge of any of this, they have those characteristics. In that sense, it's a little bit different than Western astrology, where we grow up always aware of what people think we're supposed to be like, and perhaps this influences us. Perhaps we say, I'm a Sagittarius, so I'm supposed to be like this. And they start thinking of themselves in those terms. But nobody, well, not nobody, more and more, as I said, more and more people each day, but very few people think of themselves in terms of their Mayan calendar day sign. And usually when I give people a reading, it's their first introduction to it. But this does go on at a very deep level. And people are always amazed at how closely they resemble their Nawal.
Yeah.
Well, I have another question about the astrology. Is it a type of astrology because it doesn't use planets?
Well, that's interesting. In that sense, we might compare it usefully, I think, to the Chinese system, where they also don't use planets. It's typically based on year signs, day signs, month signs, etc. And usually all we know is the year sign, which we get off the napkins at Chinese restaurants, and so on and so forth. But, yeah, exactly. But the Mayan calendar is very similar in the sense that it seems to be based upon some ancient rhythm which has not yet come to the light of modern science.
I am absolutely fascinated by that.
Kind of an earth and sky rhythm, melded together. It's something we can't define yet. And the Maya don't even try.
Maybe that's a good idea.
It simply is. Yeah, it simply is what it is. It's the way of life.
But you're not necessarily going to get Western people without that, scientific measurement.
That's true. And it would be very interesting if we had a clue as to what it was all about. But
because
I
was just going to say, just like the Maya, like to me, it just is. You don't need to convince me. I already know, But I'm very fascinated to see like how and where it could be measured, because I do think that there's something very scientific happening at a biological level. I feel that way, and I would love to. Be involved or to witness or even to hear or watch something like that happen. I think would be amazing and could, change a lot of the world's, interaction with it.
I think what you're talking about is waiting to happen, but it requires this kind of this tipping point event to kind of bring this into the mainstream so that people who are biologists and who are scientists can begin to draw correlations with the calendar. And I think once that starts happening, we'll see all of these connections and all of these parallels start to be drawn. And I mean, I can only imagine what effect that would have on Western society.
It would be catastrophic. Or it could be. I mean, catastrophic.
Maybe in a good way, yeah.
Yeah.
Catastrophic in a good way. It's a wake up and a shake up, yeah. Or
get up.
A shake up.
Could you talk about that? Yeah. Could you talk about that a little bit? Like, that's something I've wondered about for actually a few years. Like, have you ever thought about that?
I haven't. What would happen? You mean what would happen? How would it affect society? If it was common knowledge instead of a branch of esoterica?
Yeah, that, and also the idea that it could be a type of science. Like it could be somehow verified and measured, and the implications of that could be very big.
I don't know. As I said, they don't speculate about it up there in the mountains, and I guess. Maybe I know I'm not a very scientific kind of a person. I'm Emosh. I live in the other world. So I never really thought much about it, as a matter of fact. Interesting topic, indeed.
Yeah. Thanks for saying that. I think it's super interesting, too.
Well, what's your tone, by the way? You're crocodile, but what number are you?
Okay, 10. I'm a 10.
10 crocodile. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. It's kind of a high number, but at least it is an even number.
Well,
so
one thing I've noticed about 10 people is they tend to be able to manipulate reality in a very powerful and easy way. They can just kind of change the reality of whatever situation they're in with ease, and it'll just sweep everyone around them into whatever that change is. I've seen it happen time and time again.
Okay, that's an observation that makes a lot of sense to me, because they're very intense people, and they have a lot of inner resources. They usually have a profound intuitive sense. Maybe that's why they are able to shift reality so quickly.
Yeah.
The intuitive element with it.
That would make sense.
Yeah, we have a friend. He's a music producer, and he's 10 eek.
Okay. Oh yeah, that's the intense anyway. Eek is very intense.
Actually, interestingly enough, he is the most relaxed eek that I've ever met.
Yeah. Okay.
So he must be from the road year.
Tens are capable. That's another thing about tens. They're capable of keeping everything well hidden.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Carl Jung and Sigmund Freud were both born on 10 days. Now, Freud did not keep his neurotic tendencies very well hidden. But Jung always appeared to be the jolly extrovert, always calm, always quiet, always in control, and no one would ever have guessed, at all the profound inner struggle. I think I said I could do an hour today, which I need to get on with some stuff. Do you want to do a little bit more later, or what?
Well,
I could finish up the other half hours too, but I'll need to look at my schedule. But I really do have to run. I have to be somewhere at 6.
Don't worry about it. I think today, we had a really cool discussion, and we learned some cool things about the documents, and it was really a real pleasure talking to you.
Do you want to sign off with something, or?
Sure. Yeah. Why don't we do a big plug for your website and your book, and maybe any other projects that you're up to?
I'm just going to. I'll do that myself. Okay.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. Well, as usual, it's been great talking to you, both of you. It's been a long time, and I hope that it will not be as long until the next conversation.
Yeah,
but
me too.
I would like to let everyone know that I do have a website, which is called jaguarwisdom.org. And please note that it's a .org, not a .com. Otherwise, you will end up in nowhere. But I sell my book that you have mentioned, which is My On-Calendar Astrology, Mapping Your Inner Cosmos. That one is probably the most available right now because I'm running out of copies of Jaguar Wisdom, and it's in the shop for a reprint. At the moment, you can still get the digital version, and 2 other digital books that are available on jaguarwisdom.org are Jaguar Medicine, which is an introduction to Mayan healing. I also wrote that one at Momos Longo, and the Mayan Prophecies, in which I tackle the books of Chilam Balam, which are written in Yucatec, which I do not speak, and which one of my teachers, Don Rigoberto, described as the most difficult material in any Mayan language. But aside from that, most of my time is taken up with working as a Mayan astrologer. And if you're interested in that aspect of my work, you can either go to the website or, for maybe a somewhat livelier discussion, the Facebook page, Jaguar Wisdom. And there are 2 of them. There's the page that is mine, and then the fan page for the book. So I really do hope to stay in touch with you guys from Canada. It's been great. I first encountered you when you were all involved with the show.
That's right.
The one about the British rock band. Yeah. So
that's right.
It's been a great journey along the Caminando, or the Camino de la Vara. Excuse me, my Spanish is fading. Which is, the road of the light, the road of the medicine bundle, etc. It's been a great walk with you all, and a great pleasure to be on your show.
Thanks so much, Ken. It was awesome talking to you too.
Okay, great.
Okay, take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks everyone for tuning in to Living the Zolkeen. We had our guest today, Ken Johnson, 10 Crocodile, or Emosh, or Imix, and we hope to see you again next time. For 3 Seed Paul, this is One Dog Steve saying, In Lakesh.